Hello. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Last time I did this, I did not spotlight myself, and then it was like tiny little squares in the recording. So I make sure I do that. Welcome everybody. I'm going to open a chat box up on the side. And then that way, as I go through the samples and talk about them, I will put the links to the Ravelry page up in the chat. So that's an easy way to grab that pattern and be able to see it really quickly. But also, like, this is very informal. So if you guys have a question as I'm going, like, do not feel like you can't interrupt me. For me, the main reason to meet with you guys is to be able to answer questions. So if you like, one really great way is if you just hit the space bar. That's an easy way to come off of mute just real quick and then go back on when you release the space bar. So if you just want to interrupt me and ask a question, totally fine. You're welcome to do that. If that like makes you uncomfortable, because I'm that way too, you can always just put it in the chat. So if you open, usually on the bottom of your screen, there will be a little, like some little bubbles, and it says chat underneath. If you click on that, it should open a window for you, and then you can type in questions. So as I go, I'll try to every once in a while kind of check in on that and make sure if questions are popping up, I'm answering them. And that's also where I'll put links and things too. So anyway, welcome everybody. So glad you're here. So I am excited to talk to you tonight about our newest collection. This is the spring collection. And we have some fun samples for you, and we'll talk about those. We'll talk about bases. For this pre-order, oh, the first thing I should tell you is that technically it goes live tomorrow morning, but because I know that sometimes it's hard, like you get your juices going tonight and your thoughts going and thinking about what you want to do. So I will actually have, it's actually, the listings are all live for you guys tonight. So if you see anything that you really want to grab, it's not a bad idea to go grab it now, because I have a decent amount of inventory that is already dyed up and ready to ship. And that will ship out kind of in the order that I get that orders come in. So like the first people who order will very likely, if it's in stock, there are a few things I don't have, but very likely you'll get yours shipped out in the next week. And then once those run out, it'll kind of just automatically shift into the pre-order. So they're all listed like pre-orders, because I just don't, it's hard for me when we do a launch to like quickly get in there and change it to a pre-order. So I've just listed them all as pre-orders. But like I said, the first, in some of these colors, I've got, I would say like even up to 12 skeins of them. Some of them I don't. It just depends on, we just had a show earlier, and so it just depends on which one's like crazy at the show. But anyway, so that's one reason why it's nice to get in early. And I wanted to give you guys an early jump because, I love that you're here and you're supporting me and doing all of that, and I appreciate it. So they're live now for you guys. If you use the code ART, A-R-T, it'll give you 15% off of your order also. So you want to make sure you use that. And that's good until a week from today. So even if you want to wait a little bit and work out what you want to get, or what projects you want to make, that's totally fine. You have a little bit of time. Sorry, I'm a little froggy. I don't know what every time I take my children on a plane, it is inevitable that one of them catches something on the front end of our trip, and then it slowly works its way through our family. And then I will hold it off by sheer force of will until we come home, and then I get it. So that's where I'm at. I just have a little bit of a cold. Okay, so let's start talking about samples. Like I said, feel free to interrupt me if you have questions about anything. I'm going to start by talking about the samples, and then at the end, I will talk a little bit about holding yarns together, because that is one of my favorite things to do, especially with the Suri base. It is just so like fluffy and silky, and when you hold it with other things or with itself, it makes a really unique fabric. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we go, and also at the end, I'll do a little bit more about that. So let's with, I'm going to talk about this cute little kerchief. I'm going to grab it off of here. So this is called the Pressed Flowers kerchief. And it's just a little, like, little triangle. But it makes the cutest little scarf, I've seen people do it this way, which is really cute. I've seen my daughter loves to put it up in her hair like this, which is really cute. But it's just a cute little pattern. And what I love about it is, first of all, it's a free pattern on Ravelry, so that's great. The designer has done a lot of things with this motif, this flower motif. And so it's actually a great way to not only try it out and see if you like it, but also even swatch for her shawl. She does have the DK weight shawl, and the kerchief is also in DK weight. And what we did is used a skein. These are our half-size DK skeins. And I love these because I use them for color work all the time when I don't want to like have to get a whole skein broken into, when I only need a little bit of it for color work. And so you actually only need one of each color for the kerchief. So it's kind of a fun little quick project that doesn't take a ton of yarn. That would be great to use with if you have leftovers, or if you want to do these specific colors, you can get them on our website in the half size skeins. So this one right here, the main color, the background color is Verdant. That's this really pretty green. It's like almost like a light emerald color. It's green with some blue under it. And then I don't have any half size skeins in this color, but I'm about to dye some up this week. And this is our landscape colorway. It's just a really fun, like some mossy greens and some corals. Right. Let's see. Oh, let me put the link in there for you. So I've got this cute little one that I just took down from this mannequin. And then I also have one on this one over here too. Just a fun little, and it's kind of fun. You can style it either way. And one way, I'll show you, one way that I've learned that I think looks really nice, because sometimes, especially if you're going to put that tie in the front, if you just tie it like this, it doesn't quite like lay the way that you want it to. So if you just tie one side in a knot like this, but kind of make it a loose knot, and then you slide the other end through that knot, that's when you get that really nice kind of flat, more flat knot, and you can pull it tighter on one side. Anyway, just a little. So let me send this for you. Okay, you should see it in the chat. That is the link for this cute little pattern. Okay. So the next one I'm going to show you is called the Sinclair Cardi. Put that in the chat to start. And that's this one right here. It's very cute little crochet. I mean, the designer called it a cardi. It's kind of just like almost like a little, I don't know, like a little cover up kind of thing. But it's, this is one of my first, so I'm not a super experienced crocheter. I've done a lot of granny squares, but this is one of my first garments that I've done that was not actually like made from squares. But it's really fun. You just do two panels. You do a panel going this way, and then this panel, and then you connect them in the back with another panel right here. And then you just put like a little bit of edging on it. So it's kind of a really fun, cute little sweater. It uses double crochet and single crochet, and that's really it. So it's very beginner friendly. I kind of feel like if you see anything that's crocheted in our samples, I can do it, you can do it, because I'm not a very experienced crocheter. So yeah, it's called the Sinclair Cardi, and it's really fun. Put that one back up here so you guys can see it. Okay, so again, if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask any that you have, and I'll just keep going through them. The next one I'm going to show you, oh, I should tell you on the Sinclair Cardi, so it's meant to be worn with a lot of ease. It's written for 16 to 18 inches of positive ease. So I did a size small, which is a 50-inch bust, and that used 2 skeins of Posh sock, and that is in our canvas colorway, which is this really kind of subtle cream with like a little bit of mossy green in there, kind of mossy brownish green. And it even has a really subtle little bit of, trying to see if I can get these speckles and show them to you. Has some like blues and even some kind of mauvey purples in there too. It's a really fun colorway. I love a colorway that has fun little speckles that pop up, but is also really subtle. And this one's a good one for that. It's a really great neutral that blends well and goes well with the other colors in the collection too.
What was the name of that again?
It's called Canvas.
Canvas. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And this was inspired by, I should have started by telling a little bit about the artist. So Berthe Morisot is her name. And she is kind of a unique story because she was like really rubbed shoulders with all the impressionists you hear about all the time, but we just don't hear about her as much. And one of the main reasons for that is she was even like really well respected in her time as an artist, but the museums just didn't really collect the works of women artists as often as the works of the men artists. And so most of her works from her, her time as an artist were collected by private collectors. And so she was right there in that first exposition with Monet, and I'm trying to think of the others. I know Cezanne was a little later. Anyway, I can do an art history lesson, but she's just one of my favorite impressionists. I love the way she uses color. I love how, and this is common of many of the impressionists, how every brush stroke has more than one color in it, because she would take her brush and pick up multiple pigments, right? And so each brush stroke has a lot going on. And so a lot of the colors in this collection are very they're a little more subtle. They're not like super flashy and super speckly. Some of them are, but a lot of them just have just a little, like, they're layered several times in tonal colors before the speckles are applied. And so it's just very subtle, but every single stitch is going to be slightly different than the last one. That's kind of the goal. Anyway, and so one of the things she was known for is in her later works, she started to kind of leave the edges of her paintings unfinished, and the bare canvas would show through. And so we thought it'd be fun to do one that is just this really pretty canvas, kind of creamy white, but with a little subtle speckle in it. So that's kind of the story behind that one. Okay, let's see. The next one I am going to show you guys. Oh, wait, that just pulled up Sinclair again. Do my copy and paste better. Okay, this one. The next one I'm going to show you is called the Peerie Plaid Vest. And this one is another free pattern, actually. Is from it's from the fall, I think it's Deep Fall Knitty magazine. But I'm going to put the Ravelry link up. That's the link that I've put up there, but it has a link to the free pattern right off of the Ravelry page. And that is the one that I'm kind of hiding, this one back here. So I'll bring this one out to the front for a second. So this one is super fun because it looks from afar like you've done some really tricky color work here, because you've got a lot going on with the colors, but it's really just, there's a main color, which is this beautiful deep and rich shadows colorway. And then there is a contrast color, which is this It's kind of a lavender with a little bit of blue, a little aqua in there. And it's kind of just a really pretty, it's called Delicate. So it's kind of this really pretty delicate purple. And each row that you knit, you're only using one strand. So you're never like juggling multiple colors or anything like that. It's really just slipped stitches that is creating this plaid pattern. So you've got a few slip stitches, you've got a few purls instead of knits in there and things like that. But it's really just two rectangles. So you've got this rectangle here that you knit, and then this rectangle on the back that you knit, and then you seam up the sides. Well, actually, I think you knit up to here, you do the ribbing, and then you actually bind off and then pick back up again to go down the other side. So you kind of make like these two big rectangles that are connected. And then stitch up the sides and then pick up stitches to put a little ribbing on the edge. So that might sound complicated, but it's actually pretty, I would say, like, if you are nervous about color work, this is a great one to try it out on. You're not really doing a lot of fancy color work on here. Like I said, you're only ever holding one color. Each row is its own color. All right. I'm gonna see real quick. So yeah, so do you guys have any questions about that one before I move on? It's a really fun one to do. And like I said, it's a free pattern, so that's fun too. I will say I'm just short, so I often will crop mine a little bit. And I wish I hadn't, because I think it came out a little too cropped. And it's one of those ones that because you're going up and then over, it's hard to, you can't just like take out your bottom edge and put on more, although I probably could just pick up stitches and put on more, so I might do that. But anyway, so it is written a little bit cropped, I would say. So if you like your sweaters longer, I would add a little bit of length. And if you like yours cropped, I would probably keep it where they have it. So that's just what I would do. But if you like it very cropped, then I would still crop it. So, okay, find my link for the next one. Oh, let me tell you what I used. So I used Shadows and Delicate. I used 2 of the Shadow colorway and 1 of the Delicate colorway. And that was for the size medium, which is a 41.75 inch bust. I'm trying to think if I'm going to look at my notes really quick and see if she asked for, I don't think she asked for a lot of ease, but a little bit of ease. So I'm usually like a 36, 38. So I did make a size, and I usually wear a size medium. So her medium is like almost 42 inches. So I would say you probably want a little bit of ease in there, maybe like 4 inches of ease. Okay. And yes, as I said, you're only ever holding one color. So it's not as hard as it looks. All right. The next one I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a link to the one I'm wearing, which is one of my favorite ones that I've made out of these colors. It's called The Last Dance. It's a little wrinkly because I just got back from vacation and I took it with me because I loved it so much. I wore it a few times. It's just like a lovely spring sweater because it's like a little bit light and lacy. It doesn't get super hot. I think the day I wore it, it got up to 70 degrees and I started to get a little warm in the like heat of the day in the sun. But if I was out of the sun or if it was a little cooler, like in the morning or in the evening, it was perfect. So I would say like 60, mid 60s. This is like perfection. Okay. So, and the pattern, if you pull it up on Ravelry, you'll notice it looks very different in her main picture because she gives a bunch of different options. She gives an option for just doing stripes in the yoke. She gives an option for a long sleeve. She does an option. It's really kind of one of those patterns where you can, she writes it in a way that lets you pick, a lot of different ways that you can customize it for yourself. So this is in the depth colorway. Let's see if I have any of those handy. So that it's just this really beautiful, like deep teal color. And so this one, the main color is depth, but it's on our Posh sock base. And then the stripe is also depth, but it's in the Suri. So you can even see in the sweater how the two bases take the color a little bit differently. Um, but one thing that I love is that our Suri is like just a little bit heavier, I would say, than a traditional mohair silk. Like if you think of like a kid silk haze, like a Rowan kid silk, that's a little bit lighter. And this one is more like a light fingering and less like a light lace weight, like the kid silk is. And so when you have these ones where it's held by itself, it gives a little bit more coverage. It's not quite as sheer as the kid silk would be, which I like. Um, so yeah, so that's a skein. Let's see. That's a skein of depth in Posh sock and a skein of depth in Suri. And I only used one skein of each for this size. I know it's probably somewhere in a medium. Let me see what size I made. So I did size 3, which is a 42-inch bust. She suggests 3 to 6 inches of positive ease. So for me, that was kind of right in the middle. I'm about a 38, 37, 38. So like I said, it's a really great pattern, gives lots of options for customizing it. But I think as this short sleeve version really works nicely as a transition piece. Really great for spring or fall too, will work great then. And I even think like in winter, I think I'll wear it just layered over something else. Here in Ohio, when it gets real hot, I won't be able to wear it. But I could wear it inside in the air conditioning, but I would not wear it outside. I find that the Suri is really nice because it's
Turn the air way down just so you could wear it.
So true, Judy. Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I first learned to knit when we lived in Wyoming. And very soon after that, my husband's job moved us to New Mexico. And so I would, every Thanksgiving, I would crank the air conditioning and just pretend like it was cold because it made me sad. It never got very cold. We got snow sometimes in the deep winter, but it was never quite cold enough to feel like Thanksgiving unless I really cranked that air conditioning. So I totally know.
There you go. Very good. We lived in Nebraska for almost 30 years, so I know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it got cold this winter, but sometimes it's like never getting cold here,
Yeah. Well, I do like that about Ohio. We get all the seasons, but the summer for me is a little bit much. I grew up in Seattle, and so I was like, yeah, 70 was like our, that was
right, right. But the humidity here and the air that doesn't move.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah, so not a summer, not a deep summer sweater, but like fall, spring, even into winter, I think it would be great.
No, I wouldn't even be able to get it done for summer, so it's okay.
I actually felt like it moved really fast. There's something about stripes that is like really motivating, right? And so when
like I got to get moving, and then 2 more rows, and I can switch to the other. Yeah.
I think it's like one more row on steroids because you're just one more stripe.
Right. Well, I've been doing your Advent.
Oh yeah.
The hibernation, I think it is. The shawl.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
For the blanket.
I love it.
But I bought another pack of minis and I just threw them in, and I'm like, But it's definitely, let's get to the end of the row so I can start another color. So
yeah. Oh, I love it.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
Good. That's perfect. All right. I'm going to show you next the Astrid sweater. Let me put that in there. And this one was like the belle of the ball at the Carolina Fiber Fest. I had it right in the front, and within like 3 hours, I was sold out of the yarn because it's such a cute sweater. I'll show it to you. So this is the Astrid sweater. And it's super cute because it has this like split hem that curves up. and it's a little longer in the back. And it's just such a fun one to make.
Nice.
It's knit bottom up. And this one I did with our Posh Skinny held together with the Suri. And I did them both in this verdant green color. And I'm out of the Skinny right now, but I'll be dyeing up more of that. But yeah, super, super fun one to make. I think it's knit on, I could be wrong, but I think it's on 6 or 7. So it goes relatively fast. It's not like a super slow sweater, but I think there's just, when you have that Suri mixed in with anything and held together with things, I'm going to see if I can you can kind of see the drape on the mannequin, but it just creates this really lovely, just easy breezy.
You said you held the Posh Skinny and the Suri
Posh
together.
Skinny and Suri. And so because our Suri is a little bit heavier than like a regular kid silk, right? Mohair silk blend, because it's a little heavier, I have found that holding a skinny or Posh Skinny with it makes the perfect DK weight, which is awesome because our Skinny is much more generous in yard. It's like 630 yards in a skein. And so when you're holding it together with something else, that it really stretches it a lot when you hold it with that Skinny. And I just find it works better to get a DK than with the sock. Like a lot of times you'll see like a mohair and a sock held together to get a DK, but I find that holding Posh Skinny is the way you want to go for that, for sure.
All right. And what color is that?
This is called Verdant, Verdant, Verdant.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really fun. You knit from the bottom up. I'm going to show you the hem really quick again. I just thought it was so smart. So you knit, these two pieces are separate, right?
Okay.
Two separate pieces of ribbing. And then you pick up the stitches on the edge here, right here.
Oh.
And then you go right into picking up the stitches on this edge. And so it just lifts them up and kind of makes this curved hem that just is super, super cute and flattering.
Oh, that is neat.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you're like, oh, you know, when you knit something. And
I can do this. I avoid the bottom up all the time, but that one looks pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. And I really love, like, it's a little bit boxy. It kind of has that boxy, but there's just something about that curved hem that like pulls it in really nicely. So it's boxy without feeling like you've got bat wings. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did, let me look and see what size I did. So I said I did a size medium, which is a 45.75-inch bust. And for that, I used 2 skeins of the Skinny and 3 skeins of the Suri. Okay, let me get my next one going. Do I have any other questions about that pattern while I'm on it and talking about it? Okay. If you think of other
many of these would be so much cuter if I lost about 20 pounds.
Oh, well, you know what? I think that for myself too all the time. And then I think, you know what? I'm just going to knit something that works for my body now. And like, worst case scenario, this is the beauty of knitting. You can always rip it out and use that yarn for something else.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, that's true. If I keep waiting, then I'll never knit anything.
Yes. Yeah, it's fun to have things that fit your body now. That's what I finally decided for me, because I've had 4 kids, and so I went through a long period of I was knitting, but it was like my size was always changing, and I realized I'm just gonna knit something that fits my body, and I'll love it, and it'll be fun. So, but I get it. Sometimes if you fluctuate, you're like, by the time I finish this, is it gonna fit me? That's why
do I have to eat more chocolate to fit or not, right?
Darn it.
Yeah.
I love it. Serena, I hope this Zoom does inspire you to do your first sweater, because, oh man, I actually love knitting shawls, but I find that I never wear them, at least not as much. And now that I have started kind of feeling that same way about sweaters, where I knit a lot of sweaters, it's really fun because I get to actually wear them a lot more. So I'm so excited.
I'm going to need a buddy. So maybe we can do it like a sew along or something.
Yeah, like a knit along for sure. I think that'll be fun.
Right.
I am so into that, Serena. Let's do it.
I have never done a sweater before and it gives me anxiety. I've only done like, I do big, big shawls that almost like fit like a sweater. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna need someone who can like do it with me to like help me figure out how to construct the sweater.
Okay, listen, first of all, I will tell you, I have like a go-to beginner sweater and I'll show it to you in a little bit. It's not, I didn't make one for this collection, but I've made it 3 times and it is like, anyway, it's amazing. So, but I have them to show you when I talk about holding yarns together. So I will show it to you. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is called the Cake Pop sweater. And that's this cute one right here. So this is a Joji Locatelli design. And hers has long sleeves. I'm into the short sleeve sweater right now. I don't know why. I just feel like it's super, I guess I just get too hot in a full sweater sometimes. And so it's nice to have something that I still feel warm in the winter, but like not like I'm dying. So so this is called the Cake Pop. It's that fun feather and fan stitch that, like, I don't know about you guys, but as a new knitter, I was like obsessed with this stitch pattern because there's just something about it that is so fun to do. And this one is done with a sock weight yarn. So I use Posh sock and then a Suri held together. And it's written for a Suri, not for a for like a mohair. So it's meant to be kind of a little weightier and it's knit up like a worsted weight. So that's another one. If you want to hold a Posh sock and our Suri together, that'll make a really nice, like a light drapier worsted weight. So this was done on size 7 needles. And again, I just shortened the sleeves. So I did knit some sleeve and then I put ribbing on it pretty quick instead of doing the full length sleeve. And this is let me grab the yarns that I use for this, because it's always fun to see how holding yarns together can change them a little bit. So this is our portrait colorway held together with the hydrangea colorway. So sometimes when I do colors held together, I'll pick 2 very different colors. This time I picked 2 that have a lot of similar things going on. This has a lot of darker colors that are in this skein. But with the addition of a few others, like it has some greens and things in there that this one doesn't have, but it also has like a darker purple where this has a very light, more lavendery purple. And it has a deep kind of, that kind of rose red, whereas this one has just kind of like a little peaks of that kind of, almost like a clay pink or rose pink. So anyway, so I held those 2 together. Let me grab. And this one's done top down in the round. So it's kind of a nice, like classic top down construction. But it's done like as a yoke, not as a raglan, but as a yoke, if that makes sense. That is also true with the Laugh Dance, the one that I'm wearing. So you'll see that there's no like raglan increase line here. You just make a yoke that gets bigger, 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 and then you stop for where you're going to make your sleeves and keep going. Okay. So it's kind of like a big circle, whereas raglan, you put increases here in the kind of shoulder area that make your sleeves. Okay. So for the Cake Pop, I did a size 3, which is a 38-inch bust, because this one calls for 0 to 4 inches of positive. It's meant to fit, like, I wouldn't say like super tight, but it's meant to not like be really loose on your body. It's meant to just kind of graze over your body, the way she wrote it. So I used 2 skeins of the Posh sock in portrait and 2 skeins of the Suri in hydrangea for the short sleeve version. You would probably need at least a skein extra in each color and each base to do the long sleeve version. So it would be 3 sock, 3 Suri to do a long sleeve. And I did 2 sock and 2 Suri for the short sleeve. And that is on, like I said, it's on size 7s. So it goes pretty quickly. I actually cast this on thinking it was going to be, we were about to leave on a trip and we were going to have a long flight. And I thought, I need something to do on the plane. And so I cast it on. But as I was doing it, I thought, I don't know that I could, like, when I'm on a plane, I need something that's enough to like be interesting, but also like boring enough that I can do it without having to like have
So
my
you don't
all
have
my
to look at
faculties.
the pattern all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I was like, it's going to be dark. I don't want to turn on my light and annoy people. I know that I'm going to be like kind of tired. Anyway, I just knew I was like, lace probably isn't
No.
airplane knitting. And it's not hard lace. It's very simple. And it's one of those ones that you memorize quickly. But I realized that I was with the increasing and changing. I was like, ugh, I don't want to do that on a plane. So, but I'll tell you, I casted it on probably about a week before we left, thinking like I just wanted to get it started, and I enjoyed it so much that I finished it before we left. It was a fun one to make. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm kind of an obsessive knitter, so I will go a while where I just do a little bit, and then I will have weekends where I'm like, all I'm gonna do this weekend is knit.
Check out, family. You can do what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah. And for me, I get to be like, this is for work. So I'm working right now.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a really good excuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I'm going to actually, oh, wait, hold on. I had a question. Okay. Sandra, the color name of the yarn, are you talking about for the cake pop? If it's for the cake pop sweater, so portrait is the one I use for Posh Sock, and hydrangea is the one I used for Suri for that cake pop sweater. And this was almost a lento, which is the one I was going to tell you about, Serena, for your first beginner sweater. Okay, Ida, what's the difference between Posh Sock and Posh Skinny? Great question. Okay, so I'm going to grab, let's see. So here is, I want to make sure it's the same colorway. Okay, so this is our hydrangea colorway. And this is the Posh Sock right here. And this is like a classic sock weight, 420 yards for 115 grams, okay? The exact same base of like blend of fibers. So this is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, okay? Same combination of fibers is also in our skinny. So anything that starts with Posh has that blend, right? But in the Posh Skinny, it is spun a lot lighter. So let me get my finger under just a strand of each of these so you can see. Oh, come on. Okay, got to get one strand. All right. So you'll see when I hold it up this way, hopefully you can see that the skinny over here is, let me put them on fingers next to each other. That might be easier to see. So the skinny, which is this one, oh, right here, and the sock, so this one's skinny here, and this one's sock. And so it's spun a lot lighter, right? So just like, even though they're both technically a fingering weight, the sock is like that classic fingering weight that you think of when you think of sock weight yarn, fingering weight yarn. Whereas the skinny is a light fingering. So it, even though it fits into that fingering weight category, there's a range of fingering weights, right? So this is a lot lighter. So if you were knitting this on the same size needle, this one would be like a thicker fabric, and this one would be like a thinner fabric, if that makes sense. This one, so just like this one's 420 yards, the sock is. The skinny is 630 yards. So just think of the same weight, they're both 115 grams, but one of them is a lot longer. So that would mean this individual strand would be a lot thinner and lighter, if that makes sense. So that's why this one, the skinny held together with the Suri, works so well, because the Suri is a little bit heavier than a classic mohair silk blend. And that's why you want to use skin. That's what I would use, is skinny, unless you're going for more of a worsted weight, which is when I would use the sock. I hope that helps, Ida. If it doesn't, let me know and we can talk about it some more. But yeah, just a lot lighter. And I wonder, oh shoot, I forgot to grab it. because I was going to show you too. The other thing that works really nicely is if I hold the skinny double, it makes a really nice DK weight. Oh yeah, the one I have on, so this is this would be the classic Posh sock for this part. You could do it in the skinny, but it will be a little bit lighter, more like where this Suri is, right? So it's just going to have a different look. It'll be a little bit more loose and light, and like the stitches won't be as close together, right? So depending, you know how you can knit a lighter yarn with the same needle and it just gives it kind of a more open gauge. That's what it would be like, if that makes sense. But so I use the Suri held with the skinny, makes a gorgeous DK. You can also get a DK with the Suri held double. So this is the Nebula sweater. It's an Andrea Mowry. And this has two different colors of Suri held together. And it makes this just like, still just like a really light, kind of fluffy fabric. When you hold it with the skinny, Suri and skinny together, you get a really light drapey DK, but it's like a little bit more lush, and it's a little bit more, there's a little more depth kind of to it because you've got that wool in there, right? And then the other thing I've done is held the Suri doubled, and that is like the Instant Crush sweater that not Andrew Mowry, Hohi Locatelli has. This is the oh, and that's what I just showed you in the Nebula too. That's Suri held double. Okay, so it kind of just gives this really like airy, light, fluffy fabric. So I would do that for a DK. And then the other thing I've done for a DK is the skinny held double. So like sometimes you'll get these patterns that are so cute that are like a summery tee, but it's a DK weight yarn. And you could do that in a classic DK, but it just feels heavier to me. But when you hold multiple strands together to get a heavier weight, because you're holding those strands together, they're just, air gets in there between those strands. And so it just creates this lighter, fluffier, kind of drapier fabric. So I tell people all the time, anytime you want a drapier fabric, if you hold multiple strands together to get that gauge, you can get a much lighter feeling fabric with the same gauge. So if I'm knitting something that's a DK weight, I want it to feel light, I will often do the skinny double or the Suri double or a skinny and a Suri held together. You could kind of mix and match those however you like. So I'm going to put in the chat just a little cheat sheet that I use for holding strands together. So I've got a few combinations and then some examples too of patterns that I would use for that. So like I said, 2 strands of Suri, that would be like the Nebula. That's this one, which is another one that's bottom up and has this really pretty kind of ribbing detail on the top of the sleeve. That's really fun. So that's the Nebula. And then also the Instant Crush is like that too. It's that Suri held double. And that one's Suri held double and colorwork. So it's kind of a fun one to do. And then the other, let's see, and I didn't bring my Colette tee. I've got it upstairs, but that is another one that was like a light tee. Sorry, Nordland is the name of the designer, and she does a lot of DK weight tees that are really fun. So Andrea Mowry, that is the Nebula pattern, Sandra. And that's a really fun. And what's great about that one too is you could do that one with 2 strands of Suri like I did, but you could also do that with a strand of Suri and a strand of skinny held together, and it will still make a really beautiful, light, fluffy, flowy fabric. But it's a lot more cost effective because that Posh Skinny has 630 yards, right? So you're getting a lot more yardage for the same price as you would get the Suri, which has like 328 yards, I think. So I basically would say 2 strands of Suri or two balls of Suri along with 1 ball of skinny, you're going to get about the same yardage with those 2. So If you're doing skinny instead, you're using half of that color, if that makes sense. That's my that's how my brain works. Okay. So I was going to say, Sari Nordland, she does a lot of these really beautiful t-shirts that are in DK weight. And I did one in a Posh DK, and I do like it and I wear it, but it's one of those ones that just feels too heavy on my body for later in the spring or earlier in the fall. I'll wear it like deep fall, kind of late winter, where it's just starting to transition. But when I want something that's going to be more of a springy light tee, I do that skinny held double. Works really well for that. Linda, I will post this in a newsletter. That is a fantastic suggestion. I will do that. In fact, I've been meaning to do more in my newsletter where I will show one of the samples and put together kits for it and things like that too. So I'll be doing that as well. But I love that idea to talk about the holding things together in a newsletter. So I will definitely do that. Let's see. Oh, and then I was going to show you a couple options of the Posh sock and Suri held together. So the cake pop is great, a great version of that. The other one I've done that I really love, that Serena I think is like a perfect beginner sweater, because you've got a few things in there that are kind of spicy, but nothing crazy. And it's a very common pattern, which is like a top down raglan. It's easy to try on as you go. Make sure you like the fit. Okay. It's called the Lento. And so I've made 3 of them because I like it so much. So I'll show you all 3. So this was the first one I made, and I did it kind of the classic whole, like a sweater with long sleeves, right? And it's this raglan here. And this was from our Rockhound collection. I did like a really light, kind of a pale, like if I was going to try to redo this with these colors from this collection, it would be like canvas and then held together. I would say probably I would hold it together with like a delicate, or if you wanted to do something kind of fun, I would maybe do the landscape, would be really pretty with that, I think. These 2 held together, because what's going to happen is this is going to really tone down what's happening in your Suri, right? Because it's such a light color. It's going to kind of take all these other colors and tone it down. And everywhere that this has a speckle, a dark speckle, and it matches up with, a darker color here, it'll deepen the color. And then everywhere where it's that soft cream and it matches with one of these colors, it's going to lighten the color and soften it a lot. So if I was trying to kind of create a similar feeling to the one that I did, I would do canvas and then pair it with like just a pretty speckle that I wanted, that I like. So that's this version of Lento that I did. And then I also did one, this is one where this is our red ochre colorway from the Van Gogh collection. And this is actually ochre in the Posh sock held together with ochre in the Suri. So I took the same color and held it together with itself. And what that does, I think, is it kind of really blends that color and deepens it in a really lovely way. Same with the Verdant that I did back here. Because you're holding them together too, this is a secret that I'm kind of a lazy knitter. I do not like doing things like switching skeins every 2 rows. That sounds horrible to me. So a couple of tricks that I've learned as a dyer who uses hand-dyed yarns all the time. One is if I am worried about that at all, I will not switch off every other row. What I will do is I will get near the end of my first ball, and then I will switch off every other row for about 10 rows and just like fade in that next skein. And then that way, if there's any variation, you're not going to get like, this half of my sweater is this color and this half of my sweater is a lot darker, right? So it kind of takes away from that and just kind of melts them together a little bit better. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing is when you hold multiple strands together, it is very forgiving of things like a little bit of a shift of color between dye lots or between skeins. Because that's the thing with hand dyed yarns is you'll have skeins that are in the same dye lot that are right next to each other and they'll still look a little bit different just because they're getting just a little speckle here and then a little speckle goes over, you know, and it's a little, that I hope you agree is one of the charms of a hand dyed yarn is that they're all a little bit unique. But I also know that when you're doing a lot of bigger projects like sweaters, that can be frustrating. So those are my little tricks for doing that. The other lento that I did, this was also from our Van Gogh collection. So I did a dark, this is Postman is the main, is the Suri, which I think would be kind of like our shadow colorway. So like a dark, rich blue. And then I held it together with Cypress, which is like a lighter kind of mossy green color. And this one I did short sleeve, because again, I'm like in the short sleeve sweaters, but it's just a really fun, like you get to play with colors by holding the different yarns together. But here is the thing about it that's amazing is this is done on a size 10 needle. And that's why it kind of has this really, in fact, I'll just put this one on really quick over so you can see. You just have to remember I have another sweater underneath. But it has this really lovely, like, I love it because it feels like you are wearing just a cozy sweatshirt. You know, you've got that raglan shaping. It's just super comfortable and cozy, but it looks a lot more put together and refined than that, you know? And it looks like, because it's a very beautiful sweater. And, but it's knit on size 10 needles because essentially when you're holding that sock and that Suri together, you're getting a worsted weight. But because you're knitting it on kind of bigger needles, the Suri just fills in all the gaps and you get this kind of a little bit lighter of a feel to it, a little drapier than you would if you knit it on smaller needles. So yeah, Serena, if you're looking for a beginner, I mean, there's a little, the only thing I think about it that is not beginner, I'll tell you. The first thing is the designer has you do a provisional cast on so that you can then, you can make this kind of like folded down collar. I didn't do it on this one. I just left it because I liked how it looked. The first one I did, the cream colored one, I did do a folded collar, but I also was like, this cast on is so finicky for folding down a collar. So I just whip stitched it down. I did a regular cast on and I just whip stitched it down because that seemed like a lot of work this was easier. I thought, I don't know. Again, lazy. So.
How do you spell the name of that pattern?
Oh, it's called Lento, Lento. And I did link it up above where I put one strand Suri, one strand Posh sock.
Oh, sorry.
And Lento. The link up there is to the Lento. Yeah, no, it's such a good one. So it has a provisional cast on, and that was a little finicky, which I skipped. And then it does have short rows in the back. But Serena, you probably have done short rows before. I'm guessing if you've done a lot of shawls, you might have already done it. If not, it really is not something to make you worry. Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah. And so you just do some short rows in the back. And I actually find that sweaters that have short rows in the back fit so much better than when you don't have those short rows in there, whether it's a yoked sweater or a raglan. And so I always like when I see a little bit of short rows in there, that makes me feel like, okay, this is going to fit me better. So yay, Serena. I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's a fun one to make and it goes fast because it's on those size 10 needles. The other thing I tell people too, which I would, because I'm lazy and selfish, I would just knit myself a Lento. But the other thing I tell people too is if you're nervous about your first sweater, another really good trick is to just knit a baby sweater first, because you're going to use all the same techniques. Like if you knew you were going to do a raglan, find a baby raglan sweater, because you know you're going to use all the same techniques, but it's a lot less knitting, right? And it's a lot less painful when you rip back because you made a mistake, because you're not ripping back like this many stitches for a row. You're ripping back just like, a little baby amount, right? So, so I tell people that too. If you're nervous about it, that's a good way to do it. You're a very experienced knitter for having not done a sweater. So I think you will be totally fine. I think you'll be fine. Okay, Ida had a question about holding a cotton with the Suri. I've never done that, Ida. So I would love to hear, if you try that, I would love to hear how that goes. I would guess, I'm just thinking, because the wool has so much body to it, but I've held Suri with itself before, like in the nebula, and I've really liked how that came out. And it doesn't, because it's alpaca and silk, it doesn't have that same, I think that would act more closely to a cotton just because of the way those fibers have memory, or lack thereof. So I think you would be okay to hold it together with the linen. It is going to make it a little bit warmer. Alpaca does, I do think, I'm going to take this off now. Alpaca does, it does have, like, I find that it has probably not quite as much warmth as like a wool does. And that, like, in wearing it in lighter, hotter temperatures, I don't feel like it feels as heavy to me as a wool. It feels a lot lighter. But like if I wore this nebula, which is a double strand of Suri, it would get warm in the summertime. So I like the idea of holding it together with a linen or a cotton. And I think it'll make it lighter for sure. But I also would say there is still going to be some warmth to it, if that makes sense. I hope that kind of helps, but I think you should try it. I would try it. I'd love to hear how it goes. Because I think that could really make it, I think the way it'll affect the drape will be really pretty. Okay, any other questions from anyone? I'm gonna take a drink really quick. So for this, this shop update that we're doing, the bases that are going to be available are the Suri Silk, Posh Skinny, Posh Sock, Posh DK. And then we also are doing the half size skeins of the DK, which are these little ones, which are so fun because, like I said, they're really fun to do like a little project like the kerchief with, because you only need a little bit of yarn for this project. But also they're fun for color work. And then I also think it works nicely for, like, if you do the math and you realize how much yarn you need for a sweater. One thing I get a lot of is people who say, I like to make my sweaters a little bit longer. So I know I'm going to want to add like an inch or so. And so sometimes it's nice if you're going to want a little bit of extra yardage, or your yardage calculation just comes out as like 2.2 skeins of yarn. And then you're like, dang it, now I have to buy a whole third skein of yarn. Instead, you could do a half skein and you don't have to, commit to that whole third skein, which is nice. I also tell people a lot, like, I have noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed that designers, they really do not want to make people mad at them by telling you you need a certain amount of yarn and then you need a little bit more than that, because, it's frustrating if you don't buy enough yarn and then you're in that yarn chicken situation. So I think they're very shy about asking for too little. So they tend to really overestimate. So I do tell people a lot, like, if you do your calculations for how much yarn you're going to need and you're at like anything less than a quarter of a skein, I would round down. That's just me, because I feel like sometimes now if you get real nervous about it, or you like extra length or things like that, then you might want to round up. But if you're going to make it exactly the way the designer's calling for, and it's asking for, I've just found, man, you guys, every time I do samples for the shop, every time I use sometimes 1 to 2 skeins less than what the designer calls for. It's getting kind of crazy. So, so it's like, now it's going the opposite direction, where now I think we're making people feel like they have to buy way more yarn than they need. So The other thing too is if you ever find yourself in that situation and you need another skein and I'm not dyeing that yarn anymore because it's like from an old collection or whatever, just reach out to me and I'll make sure that we take care of you, because I would hate for you to get stuck with a, you know, 8/10 of a sweater. That would be sad. Okay, let's see. Linda had a question for me. Which purple would be pretty held with shadow for a lento? Ooh, okay. So shadow, let me grab shadow right here. That's this one. And we're looking for a purple to hold together. I think that delicate would look really pretty with that. You're going to get basically what this shadow colorway is going to do is it's just going to take anything that you hold it together with and it's going to deepen it, right? So I always tell people to almost just think about like if you're mixing paints, and if you mix this and this together, these paints together, you would get just a deeper, richer purple, right? With some blue shining through. I think that'd be really, really pretty. Let's see. I think it would work really well also with hydrangea if you want to go a little bit darker than this one. I think that'd be super, super pretty because hydrangea has some deep purples in there. And so what it'll do is it'll just kind of balance that out a little bit. So like all the light places will get deeper and richer by this, but then all the places where it's dark with like the dark purple, you'll have just like a really subtle kind of shift between a lighter, darker purple. I think that'd be really, really pretty. Let's see. I'll tell you, this is not a secret, but my favorite combination always is a dark Suri with a lighter, kind of a speckly lighter main color, like in the sock. There's something about putting a dark Suri behind anything that like it just like kind of comes from behind and just deepens and richens all the colors. So I think picking shadow as your Suri, like I don't think you can go wrong. I really think you could hold it together with anything in the whole collection and it would look really pretty. But I think hydrangea and delicate in particular would be pretty. I also think the landscape would look really pretty with that too. It's a little bit different. It'll be a little bit kind of more of a, it's not quite as safe, right? Because blue and purple, you kind of know are going to work. But I think this would actually be really lovely because it has a little bit of teal in there that would get darker. And then the creamy spots would just be a little bit lighter with the blue. Anyway, I think that'd be pretty too. Let's see, any other questions for me? Okay, so don't forget when you check out to use the code ART, A-R-T, and that will get you 15% off. What else? I love the idea of talking about holding things together in the newsletter, so I'll definitely do that. Also, just a reminder that all of the listings are live right now. And I might just leave them up. I think I'm just going to leave them up. And so they'll be live now and they'll be live through to when the technical like shop update time is tomorrow at 10. Your discount code is good through next Friday. If you guys ever have questions where you are you're trying to pick out yarn for a certain pattern or figure out how much you need or anything like that, feel free to reach out. My problem is because I have days that are set aside specifically for dyeing, every once in a while you'll email me and it'll take me like 3 days to get back to you. And I'm sorry. Usually that's only because I am like over dye pots during those couple days. Yes, Linda, let me grab the light blue. This one's called Tranquil, and it is just like a really pretty kind of silvery blue. It has those kind of gray undertones in there. That's on the Suri. Let me see if I have it on sock too. I do. It's on the sock. But I'm always happy to answer questions, especially about, like colors or, I'm super visual. So it would be really hard for me even to look on the website and see colors like on the website and know what they're going to look like. So if you're ever like, hey, could you hold up these two colors together? Like, I'll send you a picture of it. I'd be happy to do that because that's how I am. Sometimes I can't quite imagine how they're going to look unless I see them next to each other. When you go onto the website, you'll see there it will be organized by color. So you'll just see Tranquil, the color. And if you click on that, then you can pick which base you want and how many skeins you want. And right now they're all set to let you pick as many as you want. And what basically the way I usually do a launch like this is I'll just kind of keep my eye on it. And as I see that I'm kind of reaching a capacity for what I can do in the time that I promised, that's when I will pull them for a little bit. But for at least for the first 2 to 3 days, you should be okay to get the amount and quantity and color and base that you want. Okay, Linda, can you show the second color from the right? Garden, I think, is the one you're talking about. Let me grab that one. Let's see. That is, ooh, I'm out on sock. Okay, let me see if I have any on DK. I have some on Skinny. So that's this one right here. So it's that same Tranquil blue is kind of a little bit lighter version of that is the base color on there. And then it has these really pretty rose and kind of mossy green speckles. And it shows up on the Suri so pretty. Let me see if I can find a Suri skein of it. These guys are waiting to be wound, but it just comes out so pretty on that Suri. You can see the blues and the greens and the rose. Let's see, one Suri skein, one skein Posh. Yes, so for the one I have on, Ida, I used one skein of Suri, one skein of Posh sock. And that was for size 3, which is a 42-inch bust. And I even had a little left over. I don't know that you could go up the whole next size without dipping into another skein. But I feel like the last time I looked at it, the next size up you could, and then you started to need more skeins. But I think even up into like, I'm trying to remember, I think even up into like somewhere in the 50-inch range, you only needed 2 of each. So it doesn't, especially if you're doing the short sleeve. So it's not a pattern that eats a lot of yarn. It's one that does not use quite as much. So I actually thought it was great. I loved that about it. Okay. Would garden be pretty held together with garden? Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do, especially when you have something that has a lot of speckles going on, is to hold it together with itself. Because there's something about doing that just like, I don't know, it just balances out a little bit and calms it down a little bit. So it depends on what you like. If you really like the brightness of the speckle, sometimes that tones it down too much for what you want to do. But like if you think about like the cake pop one that's back here, you know, these are pretty speckly, but because they're similar colors, when you hold them together, it really does create a fabric that mutes it a little bit, but I think in a nice way. So I actually really like, I think a lot of times, especially if you're going to do a sweater that has any kind of lace work or cables or things like that, but you've got like a speckly colorway that you love, I think holding it together is a way that blends it just enough that it still kind of keeps its character and keeps some of that fun color shifting that's going on, but it does it in a way that's not quite so extreme, so it doesn't take away from the lace work or the cables or the pattern that you're doing. So that can be a really good way to take something that's a speckly colorway that you love, but also make it so that it works for those patterns that have a little bit more going on. If that makes sense. But yeah, I actually really love, it's funny because I love holding Suri with other things and like creating a new color by doing that, but holding it with its own kind of the same color but in a different base can really make a really lovely subtle, just like I think of like the Verdant back here, it just gives it this really pretty depth. Okay. Awesome. Well, I am going to go give my voice a break. But thank you so much for being here. If you guys have more questions, be sure to send me an email. The contact us link on the website goes right to my email too. And I'm happy to answer questions. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kate. Take care.
Yeah, you too. You too. Thanks, Judy.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Ida. Thanks, Melissa. Bye, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.